On this edition of the program, we have our worst state parties draft. Evan Scrimshaw, Ryan Jakubowski join us for that. Also, Mike Waltz, last Waltz, fired. All the details there. Before we get started, I got a little bit of news for you. There's a little bit of exclusive, a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, because I've been hearing things. Been hearing things from within Congress on how things are being progressed when it comes to the trade deals. All right. I've said on this show multiple times on the exclusive episode for Substack on Thursday, I said that May 2025 might be the most pivotal month in Donald Trump's presidency because he has already played his disorder cards. He now needs to start playing order cards. And I don't think he's in a terrible situation if he can stack some of those wins. But if he does not, well, we're going to start to look at some real deep cracks. The best source of optimism that you could say from everything that has happened post-Liberation Day is the trade deal concept, right? Okay, so Donald Trump unplugged the world's economy. What does he get for that? Well, here's what the administration is briefing Congress on. So I'm going to preface all of this with, I've previously heard what the administration was briefing Congress on, and 12 hours later, it was totally different. So this is not the truth. This is what your representative, this is what your senator knows, okay? 60 countries are currently either being actively negotiated with or have what's called a term of reference sheet, meaning that there's some type of paper going back and forth. The administration believes that none of these deals will require Congress. It is of note, Congress does not agree with that. I would say, from my point of view, that's really going to depend on how much Congress wants to fight about it. Weirdly, not in the mix on any of this, China, Canada, Mexico. China is its own thing. I heard nothing about China. Obviously, there's been a lot of cloak and dagger. Oh, we're talking to China, but is China talking to us? China doesn't say they're talking to us. We say they're talking. A lot of he said, she said, so we're going to leave that to the side. Canada and Mexico. Apparently, anything that is going to get done between those countries is going to be a USMCA change. That'll be something that will be dealt with in a currently signed trade agreement. So we're going to leave all those to the side. Of the 67 that are currently in some kind of negotiation, there are 3 that are close, and then there are a few more that are semi-close, okay? Let's do the semi-close first because I want to end here on the ones that are close. Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, Sweden, Taiwan, Vietnam, Japan, Israel. That's what we're seeing as like on the radar, but probably not this month for sure. In fact, I don't know if any of these would be this month, but if any of them would, it would be these top 3. And here they are. The United Kingdom, India, and Australia. Now, Australia and the UK are kind of their own thing. I don't know. I think all of these, the reason why they are as close is because there was negotiations with the previous Trump administration with all of these countries. They'd made progress in a direction, and then it just kind of got left after the election in 2020. India is the big deal. All right, so this is what I'm saying. Keep an eye on India for the following reason. Number one, there is a simpatico between Modi, the head of India, and Donald Trump. Things are very friendly between those two individuals personally. Obviously, J.D. Vance just came out to India. That's a big deal. J.D. Vance's wife is of Indian descent. Her parents were Indian immigrants. So there's a lot of just surface level vibe, good feelings that come along with that. But that's not really the big issue. That's the grease that might make the skids go faster. The big reason why that India matters is the following. Number one, cheap manufacturing comes from India. And if Donald Trump is going to start determining where cheap manufacturing fits in the new American golden age, well, India is a great place to start because you're probably going to be looking to copy and paste a lot of what's happening with India into a deal with China. Number two, they also don't care about IP. So if you're going to put IP protections in a deal like that, ideally something that you would see with China as well, what does that look like? A deal with India would be a very, very big deal depending on what happens. There are certain things that Indians like that they cannot get from America. You hear a lot about bourbon because Indians love scotch. So if you love scotch, you'll probably like bourbon. Harley Davidsons are something else that Indians tend to really like. Very hard to sell them into the Indian continent. So if you're going to lift trade restrictions and you're going to inject more American-made products, that's a win there. The other big thing is India, if you are going to reorder the globe, the economy, and you want to make sure that China now has less of an influence, the United States and India being on the same side is a huge part of that. One last note on this. Nobody knows anything. Congress was told that the July 8th deadline, right? That's when supposedly, this is when everything is supposed to have been wrapped up by. That's the end of the 90-day pause. If we're working, we can give time. That's what Congress was told. So expect this pause to go further is how I'm reading that. And then there's no answers on the baseline 10%. And this is my final thought on this. The message that the White House sent to Congress, and these are trade representatives, right? These are the people that are actually negotiating this, is that every single detail, they would not commit to a single detail that could be reversed by Donald Trump. And guess what? All details can be reversed by Donald Trump. Trump is going to touch each and every one of these deals. What does that mean? Well, obviously, he's going to be able to say, well, I didn't get ripped off because I'm not going to let anybody sign a deal that goes forward. By the way, these are deals that are not going to go through Congress, so they're basically going to be handshake deals, and we see how Donald Trump treats handshake deals. That being said, it means this could get resolved faster. And that's why I think that this month is particularly critical for Trump. He needs wins. Now, he can claim wins on deals that aren't great. Will that be what he does? We'll find out. All right, let's start the show.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for May 2nd, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you from Indianapolis. I'm here on a very, very silly job. More on that in a second. But we're going to go ahead and give you something that many of you have been looking for. It is a fun event each and every year, and that is the state party draft. We're looking for the worst of them. Ryan Jakubowski, Evan Scrimshaw, and myself. We recorded it about a week ago, so some of the details might be a little bit out of date, but it's an absolute blast. Let's go ahead and get to it right now. Welcoming back to the program, two of our favorites, Ryan Jakubowski. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be back, and I'm even happier that I'm back with my good friend Evan. It's going to be
exactly
a real fun one.
and Evan Scrimshaw. How you doing, man?
I will be doing better if my mic actually holds up for this entire recording, but I'm doing well.
I'm going to give this a little space because we are going to reset for our big worst state party draft. It is going down. Ryan, welcome to this tradition, a tradition unlike any other, where we highlight some of the greatest incompetence in American politics. Well, what are your thoughts coming in cold as a rookie to our draft?
Well, first of all, it's an honor. I mean, this is one of the most consequential, most important drafts that is ever done within American political culture, whether it's sports, politics, food, you name it. I mean, I'm happy to be here. But I've assembled a great strategy. I was talking to Evan earlier, and Evan did admit to me that he was nervous. I was going to steal some of his picks beforehand because, but I will say I'm excited because I haven't really thought about this as much. I thought of the best state parties, but because we're highlighting incompetence, I hadn't really thought about the worst state parties in a little bit. And I thought of a few that I hadn't really had the chance to really look at or analyze going back to 2024. So not only is this draft going to be wonderful, but it was truly enlightening to prepare for it. So I am extremely excited.
Evan, what are your thoughts going into this draft?
I feel like people are going to get mad at me for this because I think some of my picks will be controversial. But what I would just like to make something extremely clear. Part of the reason I think they're going to be controversial is because I am going to be giving a lot more of the credit for the Trump 2024 win to Donald Trump, which you can draw your own conclusions from that. But I will say I have gained a significant amount of respect for the Trump campaign, for Chris Levitas, Susie Wild, and Tony Fabrizio, watching the utter, catastrophe of the Canadian election. I have gained a lot of respect for how good that campaign was, and I think that's potentially coloring some of the state party opinions that I have. But we'll see how it goes. I love a good draft. I also come from the Bill Simmons school of gamify everything for content.
Let's do it. Do it. If people haven't realized that this entire podcast is just a naked political rip on the Bill Simmons show, then we can just spell it out explicitly. Well, since it's my show, I'm going to take the first pick in the draft, and I'm going to say the Republican Party of California, because I believe not only is California in a place, I don't know if a Republican can win for governor. I think that would still be a stretch, but they need to make more noise. They need to have somebody that is making some kind of common sense appeal to people in California, considering Gavin Newsom is flipping on his own record. You have Kamala Harris, who is sleepwalking into maybe not running. She's taken so long that you've had now two candidates that have jumped in, and they both had to do this hokey pokey. Well, maybe we'll run, maybe we won't. The Democrats are totally disjointed. And I've said for years that the Republicans in California just need a barrel-chested Mexican dude that is funny on the mic, and he can and just pushes mainline, like, moderate Republican rhetoric, and he's going to do fine. You're going to do something. The fact that they have no pulse, the fact that Rick Caruso has disappeared in LA, even though he wasn't even running as a Republican, it really, really, really boggles the mind that there is, despite the fact that nobody in California, even in LA, even in San Francisco, they've seen the policies that were pushed by the Democratic Party have become less and less popular. The fact that you can't mount anything, that you can't even see sparks, let alone a fire, that is true incompetence.
So I like the take. I'm not sure if I would have taken it one, but I think that, like, the California GOP is kind of in a similar spot to, like, the GOP in New York or kind of the GOP in New Jersey, in that you have a state that's been run by Democrats for a very long time. You have people in urban areas that are really unhappy. And yeah, like I like the way you put it, where like there should be sparks flying and there's like nothing there.
Give me a Lee Zeldin. Give me a Lee Zeldin.
Or even a Mike Lawler.
Exactly. The fact that they can't get even one of those where it's like, all right, well, Zeldin ran a spirited campaign against Hochul. I think that's a good sign for the Republican Party of New York. At least you've seen some kind of fight from them.
To me, the craziest part about all of it is that 2024 was like among the most universal takeaways from that election was that people were sick of Democratic people in big cities and blue states were getting really tired of Democratic governance. And so everyone agrees that happened in 2024 and that Kamala Harris and Democrats up and down the ballot were punished for it. And yet somehow in California, we saw the Republicans lose 2 House seats in the Los Angeles metro area. So, yeah, I'm broadly in agreement here. I don't understand how you have such an unpopular Democratic Party across the country, especially in a blue state like California, and you lose Michelle Steele and Mike Garcia.
9. The fact that the House GOP only have 9 seats in California is complete political malpractice. And if the state GOP was better there, they would have significantly more, but they don't because they're not good at this. And the thing that I keep coming back to is like ability to win tight races is one of the skills. And you lost, 2 House seats in greater LA. You lost California 13 as well. Like California Democrats actually did a really good job despite all of this real legitimate anger at left-wing politics, right? And it doesn't look like they're going to be able to pick up the pieces in 2026. I don't know how great Mike Lawler's going to do in New York, but like I think that's like a serious and competitive race. And even with the fact that I expect like I don't want to say like a big blue wave, but I expect like a Democratic year in 26, and I still think he could legitimately win that thing. And I have no reason for optimism. I have no hope. I have no like none of the House members are particularly impressive or look like they would be great statewide candidates. Like there's just nothing going on for them. I wouldn't necessarily have taken them 1, but they're certainly a first round pick for sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to give Ryan pick number 2 in the draft. Who you got?
I don't want to sound cliche or boring, but I'm just going to get this off the board. Florida Democrats. I mean, I knew you were going to have this conversation.
A perennial favorite.
I mean, this is my first year on the draft, and something tells me that this is one of our favorite. This is one of our most frequently mentioned state parties. But I want to get it off the board. I just want to highlight a few things, and I'm sure we could go on for hours. But the failures of the Florida Democrats, they haven't won a consequential statewide race because they won the agricultural commissioner race in 2018, but they haven't won like a real competitive This Matters statewide race since Barack Obama and Bill Nelson won in 2012. And I think the craziest thing to me with the Florida Democrats, and obviously it's very demographically different. The Hispanic population in Florida is very different from the Hispanic population in Texas or California or Arizona. Mm-hmm. But the Florida Democrats have been doing for years now what the Democrats as a whole did in 2024, which is get crushed with Hispanic voters and not find a way to compensate for it in the suburbs. I mean, Miami-Dade County in going back to 2016 has just continuously moved right, regardless of national environment. And Florida Democrats have, aside from like a few minor victories in like local elections, they've done nothing at all to really compensate for that in the suburban areas of the state that are more white, that are more educated, where you have areas that are demographically favorable to the Democratic Party. Jacksonville and Tampa should be trending left, and they just like the rest of the state have zoomed right. This state went from a state that was decided within 1% of the, or it was decided by 1% in 2016 to being a deeply Republican state. It's cliche, it's boring, but it's hard to overstate how bad this party is, quite frankly.
And let me. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Evans.
It's partially the Florida Democrats' fault to blame, right? They couldn't clear the field for Gwen Graham in 2018, right? They just couldn't. And the fact that Andrew Gillum could win that primary, the fact that the state party was as weak and impotent in that race and wasn't able to clear the field, wasn't able to rally around Gwen Graham, if she wins that race. I'm not saying she would have won again in 2022, but I do know that the House map would be significantly different if there was a Democratic governor with a veto pen. And maybe you'd certainly have a stronger bench. You'd have more reason for national Democrats to keep investing in the state, which is part of the sort of like feedback doom loop for Democrats is they don't have it. There's no competitive seats. So they don't spend any money. They lose the seats. They, it keeps on happening, but it's complete incompetence. And the thing is they've talked a big game. They've talked about rebuilding and it doesn't seem like it's happening. I don't even know if it's worth even trying at this point, if you're a Democrat to do so. Because you're not getting the suburban swings, and you're not bringing back Miami-Dade.
But look at that. I mean, that next census is going to be a major problem for Democrats. You're going to have to start winning Florida if you want to win the presidency again as a Democratic Party. They need to get smarter. They need to get better, and now is a time to do it because the Florida Republican Party is in civil war, and I don't know exactly how much coverage this is getting, but the long knives are out within that party for Ron DeSantis. And I don't know where in the special interest plus Susie Wiles doing her, let Casey know it was me, revenge tour because they have this, blood feud. But the special elections that happened in part were not at the levels that Trump won, because Donald Trump is a exceptional candidate, especially in Florida. But two, because the DeSantis machine was not behind them because they had beef with one of the candidates. Like, this is a party that is not clicking on all cylinders. They are shooting more at each other than they are at Democrats. And if the Democrats, led by Nikki Fried, cannot pull their head out of their butt and be competitive in Miami-Dade, look, if you can't win Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach by pretty significant margins, you're cooked. Like, Miami-Dade should be a blue county, in my opinion. I think that it is, you can find issues to tilt toward a Florida Democratic Party. Now, maybe you need to decouple from some of the stuff nationally, and you need to run a little bit more regionally there. But that is it. Florida's a purple state. And the fact that it has looked electorally like Alabama is straight to jail, to political jail for everybody in leadership there.
I mean, the case would be is that Democrats can just, they have the Rust Belt plus Georgia path, and that will bail out any census concerns. But no, I mean, the thing is, Democrats can't really afford to have both the second biggest state in the country and the third biggest state in the country, strongly, firmly Republican, especially as New York bleeds seats every reapportionment cycle.
Yeah, and also it's like, all right, so we're going to keep betting on Georgia, and so far it's gone that way. But also everybody was, they've been betting on the slow bluing of a lot of states that have either hit a ceiling at a certain point and then trailed back. Now, obviously, everything can change in 4 years, and the party can be nationally in a different position than it was otherwise. But I think what I like about this exercise is that we're not necessarily talking about whether or not the song that they're singing at the top is great. We're talking about the basic blocking and tackling, the basic understanding of being able to clear the field when you need to. Like, give credit to the Virginia Republicans when they were able to hijack that process to put Glenn Youngkin in because he was the only guy that could win, and he won in a very tight race. That's a good, competent party. And sometimes you get a great message from the top. Sometimes you got a tough message from the top that you got to do your best with. But the Florida Democrats, it doesn't matter. Good message, bad message, they stink on ice.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna jump in here with another state party that
let's go
fails in ways that are predictable, and even when they win, it's not because of their own work; it's because they get lucky. The Arizona Republicans.
Oh, another. We're getting a lot of the heavy hitters, the blue chippers, off the board early. The Arizona Republicans, which have been, they've not been the worst. They're not losing the presidential.
They won the state twice presidentially in the last 3 elections. But man, Carrie Lake, you let run twice. Martha McSally, you let run twice. You lost the Katie Hobbs gubernatorial race. Or you let Blake Masters run against Mark Kelly. Like, this is not good, man. Like, they are blowing a state that clearly was more it trended left from 2016 to 2020, but like clearly there was a lot of latent Hispanic vote to move right, as we saw in 2024. You know, that's just a bad performance, and like a bad performance in ways that are like pretty clear as to why. And, you know, Katie Hobbs doesn't seem to be the most popular governor in the world, you know, should be on paper pretty beatable. The fact that, you know, there was people trying to get, you know, a Democratic row officer to run again, you know, to primary her says a lot.
Yeah.
Does anybody here have a lot of faith that they can pull that off? No, because it's the Arizona GOP. And until they show me that they can run a competent organization, that they can competently get a candidate nominated, their preferred candidate nominated, and a not nut bar candidate nominated. Yeah. Until then, I have no faith in them, and nobody should either.
Good pick. I like the pick. Obviously, they have been a gigantic tire fire, and just because they have not been the worst, it doesn't mean that they are not very much deserving of this selection in the first round. I don't think that it's fair. Well, I'll ask you guys. It's pretty clear to me that if Kari Lake isn't the candidate, and it's somebody that doesn't have a history like she does, a loud, memorable history like she does, that there's a Republican senator from Arizona after 24.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah,
I mean,
right?
Trouble by 5.
Yeah. Like that's, it was her as a candidate that cost them that. And, you know, partly because she was running so far behind that they didn't invest in the way that they would have otherwise, but they knew that she's just a wide-eyed loon. And you know, they made Roberto Gallego go from like the true blue progressive to the MMA and churros guy, like so he could reframe himself. He ran a good campaign, but he had to run away from the reason why he was there instead of Kristen Sinema. So, yeah, a real, you know, it's a spirited group of folks over there in Arizona, but yeah, truly terrible. All right.
Spirited group of people is a way to put it.
Spirited group of people, you know. I'm going to take, with the 4th pick in the draft, the opposition party in my current home state of Texas, the Texas Democrats. The last time that I spoke to people that were within that party, they were never more excited to be able to run in an environment and never more discouraged because they didn't believe that they were able to get a candidate that was worthwhile. And then when you see Colin Allred, who I did think was a much better candidate, they weren't able to put the infrastructure around them or the strategy around them to do anything with it. Now, I don't think that there was a lot that he could have done. He wound up outrunning Kamala Harris in the state, although I don't know if that's necessarily a tremendous achievement. But there's a chance in this upcoming midterm that they're going to have either a bruised and bloodied John Cornyn or Paxton coming out of this. And this is a big opportunity for them in a what should be a Democratic leaning electorate, you know, pending what happens over the next 3 years, or no, sorry, the next year and a half. And I have zero faith in them right now. So for that, I'm giving them the 4th pick in the draft.
They were my second pick. I mean, or they're going to be my second pick. I think that's like the right way to, yeah, I think that's absolutely the right pick. And especially because they had a window. I mean, maybe not anymore, but they had a window where the suburbs were moving to the left and the vote in urban areas in the Rio Grande Valley was still pretty Democratic friendly. And they came close in 2018 with Beto O'Rourke, but nothing materialized, whether it was in the Senate or the House. So yeah, I think that's a great pick.
Can I vaguely make the argument that this should be a later round pick?
Okay, go. Yeah.
They can at least recruit good candidates. And that is something that a lot of these state parties that we're talking about can't do. Colin Allred, great recruit, right? They did get him into the House in 2018 at a competitive seat. They ended up getting drawn into a safe seat, but they got him and they got they won Texas 7 as well in the Houston suburbs. So they did get 2 House seats in 2018. But they, Beto was, I think flawed as a national candidate, and certainly the positions he took in that presidential primary hurt him in 2022. But, getting Allred to run and probably run again, they have built up there is a sneaky better bench in the state than you'd think. I'm not saying that they're great. And, if you look at the fact that, Allred, really did run pretty substantially ahead of Kamala Harris, certainly he ran ahead of Kamala Harris by a lot more than plenty of people who were reelected in 2024 did. In theory, it should be a toss-up race, against either, probably Ken Paxton or, a very wounded John Cornyn. And I can't make the case that it is because I don't think there is the org structure around Allred to do it. But
yeah,
they can at least get one. They at least do one definitive thing right. They're like a 3-point. They're a mediocre white guy, but he can make his story right. They can get candidate selection right, if nothing else.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see how Allred runs. I don't think he's going to be like Beto, where once people saw Beto, I think they had made their decision, and so the second race wasn't particularly interesting or close, and you had all of his flaws sort of bubble up to the surface in a way that they didn't in the Cruz race. I have faith that Allred is going to run a better campaign. I saw a lot of his ads and watched his debate with Cruz. He was a little when the lights got bright, he wasn't really able to meet the moment, and part of the reason is that you just have to run as a different candidate in Texas. As a Democrat, you cannot he was saddled with the border, and he was saddled with the trans stuff, which is poison for winning in this state statewide. Whether or not he's going to be able to get beyond it in this election, he's going to have a chance to. I'm curious. The one thing that I will say though is that when you look at bad state parties, you see institutional rot, and they haven't been able to keep those border towns, the Rio Grande Valley, under their control. And that's something where it's like you start to look at, okay, well now the math is just different, and you're begging and praying that these suburbs are going to keep tilting left in a way that might just not happen. Like they might be as liberal as Texas is going to get.
Yeah, that's a fair guess.
Yeah, I'm on Justin's side, and I think Evan is like the comp about doing one thing right. Texas Democrats have run good candidates statewide, but I think that's kind of checked because running good candidates only matters insofar as the state's competitive, and it hasn't been that way. Do you mind if I make my...
Yeah, hold on. I'm just going to point out a Texas Democrat is the one conservative friend from the White Lotus season that just happened. Just so everybody knows, that is a Texas Democrat. It is not like a Democrat in other places. It is somebody that is liberally minded that goes to church. That is even out here in Austin. That is more the vibe, and you need to run a candidate for them. You need to run a candidate that Beto was until he started talking about, kneeling during the anthem and dumb stuff like that. Like I could nitpick that campaign for a million years. Ryan, go ahead. Pick number 5.
Okay. So I have this one is really exciting to me because I think this is, I'd be shocked if this this is going to be like, I'm not even sure if this one's been, I doubt it's been featured on the many drafts you guys have had, but this one I don't think is on anyone's list. So without further ado, we're going on a, it's kind of been the usual suspects up to this point. And we've kind of been in the big states. I'm going to a small state or a smaller state. I'm taking the New Mexico GOP. Now, before anyone says, before anyone says, that's a reach, which it might be a bit of a reach, but I'm here to, I took the Florida Democrats last time.
If your guy's available, you got to draft your guy.
I mean, hey, the Seahawks my football team doesn't do that. They like to trade down. But against that spirit, let me get into it. So New Mexico GOP, of all the states where the Republicans should have broken through in 2022 or in 2024, New Mexico is at the bottom. They, or it's at the top, and by at the bottom, I mean the Republicans, nothing happened there for them. Republicans had a good 2024, or Trump had a good 2024 in Arizona, great 2024 in Texas and Florida, won Nevada. New Mexico, he did 3 points better than he did in 2020. I think 4 points, actually. still lost it by over 6%. First of all, and in congressional elections, the Republicans have really not been able to maximize anything here. I mean, there was a competitive seat, the 2nd district in the South, which was redrawn by the Democrats in 2021 to become a Democratic leaning seat. It voted for Trump in 2024 because it is a right trending seat. Gabe Vasquez, the Democrat there, won by a pretty good margin in his reelection bids. So there was a pretty clear ticket split there because Republicans were not able to run an effective campaign there. The Republicans also lost control of that seat in 2022, despite widely being favored to hold on to it. Evan was one of those people. Evan and I had a running joke with that seat because Evan kept picking the GOP to win it. They did not. And so this is a state that it's rural. You have a lot of people in the oil industry. It's obviously a state with a significant Hispanic population. And now it's the year 2025, and it's not just the Florida Democrats that are struggling with Hispanic voters. It's Democrats across the country. New Mexico, it swung a bit to the right in 2020. In 2024, the Republicans did nothing with it in the congressional election, and it wasn't even that close. Kamala Harris still won it by 6%. And so I think demographically, this is a state that should be that Republicans should be a lot more competitive in. And even in 2024, when kind of the stars aligned for them in a lot of neighboring regions that are demographically similar, nothing changed in New Mexico. So I'm going to put the spotlight on them.
Also failed in 2022 with a good candidate against a governor with some pretty serious, allegations of impropriety towards staff. Like the fact that Ron Cheney couldn't get close is pretty bad for them, and more signs of the sort of institutional failures given the very favorable headwinds that the state GOP should have in New Mexico.
So do you think that was a reach, Evan? Where was the New Mexico GOP on your big board?
I mean, I wasn't going to take it that soon, but it was certainly on my board, mostly because Ryan has complained to me about them before. So I have thought.
Okay. Well,
there was a lot of pre-draft buzz. A lot of pre-draft buzz. They got the big official visit and everything. So the word was out amongst the scouts.
In fairness, I think I'm about to take a bigger reach here with my next pick, whatever that is. So I can't really criticize Ryan's drafting skills.
You want to know what? It's right now. Go ahead.
Georgia Republicans.
Georgia Republicans.
They have absolutely thrown away one of the most reliably red states, and only have managed to win it when Brian Kemp is at the top of the ticket. And if he decides not to run, and I think that's sort of the current expectation, obviously that's subject to change, but
that he's not going to run or that he is going to run?
I think the current expectation is he's going to take a pass. He's not running. He's going to run for president.
That's not what I've heard, but okay.
I again, maybe it's changed in the last 2 weeks, but certainly what I've heard is he doesn't look like he's going to run for Senate. But outside of Kemp, they don't win. I'm sorry, they threw away 2 Senate seats and in 3 senatorial elections by being purely incompetent. If it wasn't for Stacey Abrams, it would be 4 for 4. Biden shouldn't have won the state. I'm really sorry he shouldn't. It was a bad performance. Yes, they flipped Georgia back in the presidential. It's a bad performance by the GOP. The state trended still, nearly 4 points right from trended 4 points left despite a 2-point swing. It was a bad performance. The headwinds are there, and they have blown. And the thing that gets me right is that even the white parts of the Texas suburbs, they actually did revert to some extent in 2024, bigger than national swings in your South Lake Texases, in your Fort Worth, in your sort of the mid cities, your Collin, your Dentons, right? A lot of that suburban swing that I had spent so much time talking about, make all your GFR jokes now. A lot of that swing collapsed back to the GOP in Texas. In a lot of places that look like Forsyth County, they didn't in Forsyth, they didn't in Cherokee, they didn't in Hall. And that is, I think, a really, really big sign of institutional party failure from the GOP. Well, look, people can say what they want. The last time I came on, we talked about, Kemp v. Ossoff, if that ends up being the race, what I'm gonna leave that as a toss-up because I think John Ossoff's really good at it. But obviously, Brian Kemp can win that race, but state party apparatuses.
I'm just gonna say I need it. That's the heavyweight match for the midterms. Come on, Kemp. What are we doing?
But state parties should not be living or dying on the idea that they need this one person to run or else they're screwed. And I think if Kemp decides to take a pass, will anybody still even have that race at toss-up? There's no sort of air that they've built. There's nobody left to take the baton. It's really Brian Kemp, or everyone's going to think John Ossoff starts that reelect as a pretty substantial favorite.
I mean, Georgia Southern State, they love football. They should run like a really good football player who's like universally loved. I feel like that could be a good. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
That did. Maybe one who watches vampire movies and brings that to the stump in the last 2 weeks. I started out skeptical, but you've swayed me. I do think that if you erase the Kemp machine from it, which I think you can also trace some of the failures in the midterms from there being a internal civil war, Kemp and Raffensperger surviving a Trump challenge, and then the candidates not being favorites of the Kemp machine, them coming on board late. Like there has been a lot of disharmony, disunity. In fact, it's partly what it is a 5-8 years on version of what I'm saying with the Republicans in Florida, that like, if you don't have your stuff together, then this stuff doesn't magically bring itself together. Now, the Florida Republicans have been in a pretty unbroken state of improvement since Jeb. They've done a lot of blocking and tackling on registration and stuff since then. But I think it's still disputable, but I can see it. I can see your draft pick, Georgia Republicans.
This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you can get 2 bonus episodes of this show. By the way, DC, San Francisco, Indianapolis, 3 places I've been this week. Guess how many episodes I have skipped this week? Bonus or free? 0. 0. 0, because you guys deserve it. You guys are paying your hard-earned money. Good Lord. Hopefully you're not looking at your stock portfolio. Hopefully you are secure in this obviously unstable economy. But the one thing you can be sure will always happen is your boy, Justin Robert Young, giving you what you paid for each and every week on the podcast, rain or shine. Head on over there right now. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Here's some stories that are late breaking. Donald Trump has nominated Mike Waltz, his former national security advisor, to be the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. This, of course, is precipitated by Waltz initiating a mild security breach in which he added journalist Jeffrey Goldberg in a Signal group chat discussing sensitive military operations in Yemen. Despite the incident, Trump praised Waltz's service and expressed confidence in his capabilities. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was appointed to interim national security advisor while retaining his current position. Okay. For the record, 3 members of the Republican House were initially named to Donald Trump's cabinet: Mike Waltz, Lee Stefanik, and Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz flamed out immediately. Didn't even make it to the confirmation hearing. Mike Waltz got named to National Security Advisor, and Lee Stefanik got named to UN Ambassador. Until they started doing the math on some of the stuff that they needed to pass. They knew they needed a reliable vote in the House, and so all of a sudden, Lee Stefanik, maybe your New York City dreams are going to have to wait for another day. You're going to have to go ahead and head on back to the House. Mike Waltz is the only person who gets there and starts his job. And then he adds Goldberg to the group chat, and apparently he was not particularly well beloved in the role aside from that. And so, Mike Waltz, out of here. Fist, flag, fire. Have a good time at the UN, though. If you're going to fail somewhere, failing to the UN, That was the position that Nikki Haley distinguished herself with, for the record. It's the backup to the guy who adds Jeffrey Goldberg to group chats. Fun times. U.S. District Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr., who was appointed by Donald Trump, ruled that the administration unlawfully invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan migrants in South Texas. The administration has claimed that alleged members of the Tren de Aragua gang members constituted an invasion, justifying expedited deportations without hearings. Judge Rodriguez found no legal basis for this assertion and emphasized that the Alien Enemies Act cannot override due process protections under the Immigration and Nationalities Act. This decision marks the first permanent injunction against the administration's use of this controversial act. And let me also point out, the Alien Enemies Act has been controversial for, since he first mentioned it on the campaign trail. Essentially, what it rides on is the idea that the Tren de Aragua gang is in coordination enough with the government of Venezuela that they could be legally classified as an army. And if they could legally be classified as an army, then they are invading. And if they are invading, they can be kicked out. This is part of the big-brained bag of solutions that MAGA had been cooking up for the 4 years that they were out of power, knowing that there was a big appetite for expulsions, especially of gang members. And so getting the gang members out was going to be something that was popular. How can we do that as fast as possible? The Alien Enemies Act became the understanding. One of the things, and I'll point this out to shout out to our friend Gabe Fleischer. You might have heard the Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It was reported in the New York Times that he was deported using the Alien Enemies Act. He was not, right? The only people that were being deported using the Alien Enemies Act are members of the Tren de Aragua gang, and that is specifically because they are from Venezuela. And you need to do that because you need to prove that there's a connection to the Venezuelan government for that to work. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was just regular deported because he had an order for deportation. The question about Abrego Garcia was where he went, as opposed to whether or not he should be expelled. Essentially, even if Garcia came back, he would really only be sitting in a holding tank somewhere where they would try to remove his withholding to send him right back to either El Salvador or to somewhere else that would take him. He was legally able to be sent to literally anywhere else on the planet other than El Salvador. The only question with any of that is whether or not the countries will take them. So you've heard some stories over the last few days that the Trump administration might be nearing agreements with other countries, some in Africa or the Middle East. Legally, Kilmar Abrego Garcia could be sent to the South Pole if the governing body of the South Pole would agree to just let him into the border. Then he could be legally sent there. The one place he couldn't legally go was El Salvador. And even then, the reason why was because of the gang activity that now is no longer there. But also the reason why it's no longer there is because they put them all in this gigantic prison, which is where Garcia is now when he's not chilling with Senator Van Hollen, having a lobby party with the Maryland senator. And finally, the United States and Ukraine signed a landmark minerals agreement establishing a 50-50 joint reconstruction investment fund. The deal grants the United States preferential access to Ukraine's critical minerals, such as titanium, lithium, and uranium, in exchange for American financial and military assistance aimed at Ukraine's post-war reconstruction. Ukraine retains full ownership of its resources, with profits from new ventures reinvested domestically for the first decade. While the agreement lacks explicit security guarantees, it signifies a strategic commitment from the United States, bolstering Ukraine's defense capabilities and economic recovery amid ongoing tensions. Now, as we have been through the last 100 days, the first 100 days of the Trump 2 administration, you have to wonder that on day 101, if that deal had just been signed at the White House when Zelensky first showed up, whether or not part of this would be different. Because that was a sign from people that they were not in love with where the Trump administration was going. It was an ugly scene. There was an idea that, again, kicking up the idea that Trump was subservient to Putin because he was intentionally embarrassing Zelensky. I just want to point this out. I'm not here to say I told you so. I'm not here to say that I'm brilliant, all right? Because I don't think you need to be brilliant to see this kind of stuff. I said at the time, I thought Zelensky had made a major error. He was going to wind up signing that deal anyway. Guess what? He signed the deal anyway. And to go back to our last story, I told the Democrats that sticking up for Kilmar Abrego Garcia was not going to be the right move. Eventually, they were going to have to distance themselves from him. Guess what? What are they doing now? We've had more reports that, exactly how much he beat up and menaced his wife, about how his wife's ex-husband or baby daddy had said that she was living with a gang member. How Kilmar Abrego Garcia bragged after battering his wife, saying that nobody would be able to touch him. Like, I'm just saying, like, I'm doing my best to give you guys good information here. And I think I'm succeeding. Rain or shine, man, on the road or at home, we deliver for you. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go. And now, back to our awful state party draft.
All right. There's a state where I think both parties could be on it. And I'm going to wind up going with the Democrats from the silver state of Nevada for some of the reasons that this is me looking forward, because I think that there are gigantic warning signs in Nevada that have not been addressed and don't seem like they are going to be addressed. The Nevada Democratic Party has been in total shambles for years. They've been gliding off a machine apparatus that has slowly decomposed. And if it weren't for the fact that there was a massive candidate quality issue for the Republicans in that state in 2024, and they underfunded him, and it seemed like by the end of that campaign, he didn't really even want to be running, they would have that Senate seat as well. And so the Nevada Democrats are my selection.
I like it. I think what will be interesting is whether or not they can get a better candidate to run against Joe Lombardo than Steve Sisolak again. The rumor reporting as we're recording this is that he's looking at a bid. A good, competent state party will snuff that out extremely quickly. I think I think hilariously that's we sort of have like a real in-time test of the strength of the old Reid machine, the institutional power of the state
it's
party.
gone. It's gone now. The Reid machine is gone. It's done. It's over.
Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Masto still both have Senate seats.
They do, but look, Sam Brown was the candidate, right? In Nevada. Obviously, his story, his bio is inspiring, survived an IED attack. But by the end of it, watching that race, he didn't want to be there. You can tell when a candidate is not, he knew he wasn't getting funding, and he did not feel comfortable out on the stump. If that was a live body that eventually they started funding at the 11th hour when they started seeing that early vote come in, I don't think that is a Democratic Senate seat right now. It was extraordinarily close.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted on this because I agree with Justin that Sam Brown probably didn't want to be. I don't think he was in general a good candidate, regardless of how inspiring his story was. I also think that I'm also totally on board with like the long-term ticking time bomb that is Nevada for the Democrats. On the other hand, I think we can't. Two things. I think first, there have been 2 Senate races in Nevada in the past 3 years, both of which Democrats have won. 2024, They were favored to win, but I think in retrospect, that race was always a bit closer than people thought. But 2022, people didn't, Democrats had a lot of wins people didn't think they were going to get in 2022. Catherine Cortez Masto probably shouldn't have won that race, and she still ended up winning narrowly. I think to go back to the point we're talking, or, just Sisolak in general, while I don't think he'd be a particularly good candidate because he was not a particularly popular governor and was, I think, the only sitting governor to lose re-election in 2022. I'd also make the argument that you also maybe don't want to run Aaron Ford, who is kind of the heir to the throne for Nevada Democrats, just given that Joe Lombardo probably, I think just given what we know on his approval ratings, way more popular than Sisolak ever was, maybe you don't, you should try, but maybe you don't throw someone kind of as a sacrificial lamb against Joe Lombardo, who seems like he's on track to win anyways. But beyond that, I think we're in agreement here.
All right. Well, this is when the draft does start to get a little dicey. We are making our own a strategy here. A lot of, again, the blue chippers are off the board. We're past the valley of talent, and now we are trying to see where it fits on our squad of loser state parties. Ryan, who you got?
Okay, so I'm going to go up to the Midwest now, and I'm going to take the Minnesota Republicans. This is kind of a blue chipper. They don't get too much attention because Minnesota is just not competitive in general. With that on its own, it's kind of a reflection of just the broader problem that we're dealing with here, which is that Minnesota GOP are significantly worse than the GOP in neighboring Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And by the way, I have a sneaky suspicion that we're going to be talking about, depending on how long the draft goes, that those state parties are also not very good. So you're the worst in the pack out of a very underwhelming pack. So to me, Minnesota is interesting because to give some credit where credit's due, I guess not credit, but to kind of just compensate for this, it is more urban and it is a bit more educated than the rest of the Rust Belt states, right? Like that's fine, and that makes sense. But I don't even know the last time Republicans won a consequential statewide race here. They haven't done well in House races in recent years. Tim Walz could have had an impact, but I think the fact that we saw like a 2.5 point swing towards Trump in this state wasn't all that impressive. And in general, Minnesota is roughly as white as Pennsylvania. And if you compare it to like a deep red state in that region, like look at Indiana, which is a good case study here. I Googled this beforehand. But the bachelor degree delta between Minnesota and Indiana is only 5%. And given the fact that Minnesota is consistently mid to high single digits for Democrats, and Indiana voted for Trump by like 18% last November, that there's only a 5% bachelor degree difference, which is education is becoming one of the most, important, influential, predictive indicators of how people are voting. That's crazy to me that this state is only 5% higher in terms of the percentage of voters with bachelor's degrees. And it's a totally different political atmosphere. So to me, the Minnesota GOP, everyone knows they're bad, but no one wants to talk about it because Minnesota's not a competitive state. Just going to, take that, add it to the roster for now.
Counterpoint, they consistently outperformed in state legislative elections. The counterpoint to my counterpoint is it's entirely possible Ken Martin just sucks at his job. So, great that we elected him as the DNC chair. Just love that we did that instead of Beto McClure. Fan-flippin-tastic that we just let the guy who blew a Democratic trifecta in a blue state. Just love that that's the guy we made state party chair or DNC chair. Love
National
that.
chair, yeah. Well, at least they got a competent vice chair.
Oh, yeah. That makes me feel a lot better. Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, I love the idea that David Hogg is going to be running primaries against his own party and then goes to his grift factory to run primaries against his own party, and then goes to his job at the DNC so he could defend his candidates against the primaries that he started. And it's just a very hot dog man life that David Hogg has created for himself.
Is his grift factory right beside his pillow factory, or are they in different locations?
I say this with every ounce of privilege I have as being a fellow South Floridian, specifically from Broward County, where he is from. It takes real balls to look at a school shooting and say, this is my opportunity. This is my get rich quick scheme. Everything that I have read about David Hogg is that anybody involved in March for Our Lives or any of the other organizations, he has run through their patients immediately. He's a real piece of work. I can't believe that he is anywhere close to levers of power in that party.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's not great.
Minnesota Republicans. I don't know a ton about the state. Here's what I do know. I watched Tim Walz's gubernatorial debate against the man who was running against him, so I could break down Tim Walz's film before he did the VP debate. And I came away believing that Tim Walz was a good debater because the other guy sucked so bad. And then Tim Walz laid the egg of all eggs on national television. And I was like, oh, okay. So the Republicans are just the Washington Generals, and they don't think that they have a chance. And so Democrats are able to just tee off on them and think that they're good in Minnesota. And then you go up to the big leagues and you wind up getting dusted by, like, say what you will about JD Vance, but at least, Tim Ryan's a live body. He's somebody that was going to punch back in a debate, and JD Vance was better for it. That's woof.
No, that makes me feel a lot better about Ryan's pick. Can I move a couple states east? Go ahead. Michigan Republicans. Just honestly stunned they made it to me. They made it to me at pick 9 overall. They lost a Senate race to a non-incumbent Democrat, right? The only of the Democratic Senate saves from 2024 with a non-incumbent, right? In a Trump state. Yeah. They did so despite the fact that they had an extremely favorable sort of political issue in Gaza, the Middle East, and all of those sort of related foreign policy questions, helping them in the Detroit metro, and possibly hurting with the college campuses, of which Michigan has quite a lot. But it's just institutional failure. 2018, 2022 were both disasters for them. The fact that they let, a pro-choice ballot referendum win by, 15 points. You had Tudor Dixon just completely getting,
her name is still getting bounced around. Talk about, I guess this is one of our hallmarks when we look at ranking terrible parties. When you have awful candidates that are proven losers that just keep getting their name bounced around, that you have a systemic issue. Like, if you lose an embarrassing thing,
pick is going to be John James, and who's lost 2 Senate races already, and Mike Rogers
John James is
going to be the Senate nominee who just lost to Slutkin. I don't know in what universe, I don't know what universe he's going to win in probably a bluer year. From at a state level, they blew the trifecta in 2022, despite what at least should have been a very blue year. They had no ability to sort of like triage the pro-life stuff, right? The pro-choice, that like the ballot referendum, they should have said, look, if you want to protect a woman's right to choose, vote the way you're going to vote there. You need to elect Republicans to lower inflation, to stop the Biden recession, yada, yada, yada. And they couldn't pull that message off. They're probably going to lose the state house again in 2 years, which they only got back extremely narrowly. And like, you're probably looking at another Democratic trifecta after blowing a trifecta, losing a ballot measure to put independent redistricting on the ballot too. Like, they're just taking L after L that is like diminishing what I think, because of Michigan's sort of blue hue at a presidential level, has sort of skewed the fact that state Republicans have had a really, really long run of power, or at least shared power at a state level. And they've blown it all in the last decade, mostly, for nothing.
Yeah. I got to say, strong pick. When you look at the candidate difference between what the Democrats are putting out for that Senate seat and what the Republicans are, it's bleak for the GOP. And that is a state that we can talk a lot about what's happening at the top level with the White House now. But to me, if I were a Republican operative, I would be saying, let's get ahead of this shifting demographics, right? Like we are now a party that needs to appeal to working class voters. That's not an option anymore. It's not like we have a guy that maybe can. No, we are appealing to working class voters. And then they send out Mike Rogers' dumbass again after he just lost in a more favorable environment, in a situation where he could tie himself closer to Trump. He underruns Trump and he loses. And so now he's the front runner there. There's nothing about his story, about his message, about what he wants to run on that has anything to do with the kind of working class voters that won Donald Trump that state in 2024. Nor does it appear that there's anybody that can step up into that role. It's bleak over there. Like they can't figure it out. And then meanwhile, the Democrats have 3 candidates that are like running at least competent campaigns. They've been able to put their message out there in a way that I think is interesting and differentiated, which means that they know their electorate. They know the strengths of their candidate, and they're already jockeying. You can see, light behind their eyes. It's zombie party out there. All right. The Midwestern states are they're rapidly getting ripped off the board, because I'm going to go with the Pennsylvania Republicans.
I love it.
I thought that was another Midwestern state, but I mean, hey, let's see. Yeah.
Yeah. I like when we look forward at the inability for the Republicans to be competitive in areas where it's not just Donald Trump. When you are, you run Doug Mastriano as a total dog against Shapiro, when you can't find anybody that's, going to challenge. I mean, when Oz is running against Fetterman because you are totally feckless in terms of your internals, that Donald Trump's endorsement just totally swings everything nationally. Now, granted, McCormick beats Casey. That's good, I guess. But again, he's kind of another carpetbagger, and he ran a good campaign. I don't think that is indicative of the state party by and large. And I, compare Pennsylvania to Ohio, where you do have a competent Republican Party. Now, it might be one that'll be swept through by Vivek Ramaswamy, so we'll see where that goes. But the Ohio Republicans are competent, and it's night and day with their neighbor to the north. So the Pennsylvania Republicans are my draft pick.
I honestly think that if it weren't for McCormick winning by 20,000 votes, I don't even remember anymore, such a marginal amount, we'd be having, it's a good pick, because I think had that gone just narrowly the other way, it would have been gone for.
They would have been higher
now.
They would have been higher. Yeah. And McCormick ran, I think, a really good campaign. People kind of forget that the highlight reel of Kamala Harris's past statements, that first hit the internet because of McCormick's campaign. They were ahead because they knew they needed to nationalize that race to get it beyond Casey's incumbent advantage. And they knew that Trump was going to be dumping so much money and time and effort into that state that they needed to draft off it. But again, I think that they did a good job, and they barely squeaked it out.
Yeah. And also the fact that Bob Casey pulled a Bill Nelson, and I think the consensus is now that he really ran a flop of a campaign that was totally lacking in any energy or effort.
Evan, your thoughts?
No, I think McCormick is one of these is a hard sort of piece to put into this puzzle. I suspect I know where Ryan's going to go with this next, and I kind of think that I would flip the draft order, assuming he does what I'm expecting him to do.
Are we ready for me to see if I do what Evan is expecting me to do?
Know. I'll tell you what, now we're really into brinksmanship here, folks, because Evan wasn't even able to be a pundit because he's going through his draft board and trying to figure out what's going to be available. Go ahead, Ryan.
Evan is on his heels right now. No, I mean, here, I will say this. I'm taking Wisconsin GOP, and I'm guessing, Evan, that's what you were. Okay. Well, I will give you a minute or two of thinking where you're going to go next. I still think there's a few good ones on the board, but let me just say, I think this is pretty simple. This is a state that is very white. It's very rural. It's getting older.
Yeah,
and obviously Donald Trump won the state, and I think everyone agrees that it was good for him that he won it back. He also won it by 0.6%. He won it by less than Michigan. He won it by less than Pennsylvania. It was a full 10% to the right of Ohio, or to the left of Ohio. So that on its own, it's a winner take all, so it doesn't matter. But I think that on its own is not that great of a performance. But the bigger concern for me is that the Wisconsin GOP, when was the last, Trump aside, when was the last time that they just showed up for a competitive or consequential statewide election in a presidential year or a midterm? I think the last time that happened was probably, aside from Trump, 2016 Senate. Because you can make the argument that Ron Johnson winning in 2022 was, impressive, but I don't really think that is going to hold much weight, given that Democrats got out of town by September. No one thought Mandela Barnes was within 4%, let alone going to win that race on election day, or maybe 3%. And he still he lost by a point. It wasn't even like it was it wasn't even like Johnson won just by coasting. He barely won, and he should have lost if Democrats had given Barnes more attention, the funding that he in retrospect deserved. Tony Evers won re-election by 3.5% that year. Tammy Baldwin beat Eric Hovde. The Republicans were not able to field a very good candidate for that race, despite the fact that race was in retrospect winnable for them. And can we just, I know it's not a partisan thing, I know it's an off-year thing, but these Supreme Court elections are really important, and Republicans just have been getting crushed in them. Going back to 2023, Protasewicz, going back to beginning of this month with Susan Crawford. So these elections are really important. They decide, the maps of state legislation in Congress, and Republicans just can't win them. They can't even come close. They're not even competitive anymore. And this is a state it's a perennial swing state. So, demographically, they should be doing better. And aside from Trump kind of saving their bacon in 2024, and I think with Ron Johnson in 2016, that not a lot of things to be happy about for the state GOP. And they are, by the way, they are very lucky that the political geography is so beneficial for them, because they barely won the 3rd district this year, despite the fact that is a Trump seat in a right-trending area. So can you imagine, Evan and Justin, if there was a competitive seat that was actually a Biden +1, Trump +1 type district? There's no way Republicans would win that. Just throwing that out there.
No, they're complete incompetence. I was trying to get cute, hoping that I could sneak Wisconsin in by 4. No, it's absolutely the correct pick. I think they're incompetent chuckle expletives. I've already sworn enough on this. Apologies to your editor for that one. No, they're really bad at this. The fact that they needed Elon to try and dump $25 million in because they had no organization for the state Supreme Court race this year, that says everything, right? I will say, put some respect on Scott Walker's 2018 performance to only lose by
I was gonna say
2-ish in a blue wave year, pretty good. But your broader point that it's been a while since they put in a good performance is very true. Demographically, the fact that Wisconsin is now the bluest of the 3
blue
wall states is hugely impressive. Now, the only other case I'd make against them is they have had to deal with the GOAT tier Democratic state party and state party chair in Ben Wickler and the Wisconsin Dems. Like, I think they get a lot of credit for this, but no, it's absolutely the correct pick. And I really think there's like a drop here, but I think I have a pick I don't hate. I think.
Okay.
New York Democrats.
New York Democrats.
If this were pre-2024, they would have been a second round pick for me. I would have taken them before I took Georgia or Michigan.
Sure.
The case against it is they did have a very good 2024 at the House level. I know that as the Prez margins were slashed, they flipped, multiple seats. They New York 3, New York 4. Did they beat Molinaro, right? Like truly a great. I think they gained 4 seats net. Like that's a really good performance. Here's the case against them. 2018 was 2018 was good, but 2020 and 2022 were terrible. Their whole redistricting gerrymander situation was a complete disaster. That kind of got bailed out by good ticket splits anyways, but like they don't know what they're doing. They can't figure out whether, they're going to back Hochul or not. They can't figure out what to do with Michael Lawler. They couldn't figure out, by the way, that they needed to beat Michael Lawler to try and, cut the head of the snake off before he runs statewide, which is, now a shockingly plausible, winning scenario for him. Lee Zeldin got within 6 points in 2022. And I know it's not a quote unquote state party, but it's also like the biggest part of the state. So yes, I am lumping this in anyways. How the hell is Andrew Cuomo going to be the next mayor of New York?
Back from the dead, baby.
But like, how when they took him out, how did they not take him out so thoroughly that they precluded this from happening? How are they so bad at their jobs that they didn't let this happen? And the fact that the rest of the field that has been put up, that they weren't able to find somebody with more sort of like gravitas than, the sort of, than like the DSA aligned, good on social media lefty. I mean, look, I love Zoran. Like, I don't know how to pronounce the name. Apologies. I'm bad at these kind of names, but like, but me loving him is not a particularly good endorsement of his electability in what should be a, New York City is a, for the level of democraticness that it is, it's a very working class city. It's a city that trended really, really right in 2024. It's the kind of city that, it's not going to matter because it's in a blue enough state, but it's the kind of place where Democrats are probably going to, probably have a lot more room to fall still. And we're just doing Andrew Cuomo. Like, he's just going to get away with it. And I don't even mean the stuff. I don't even just mean the sexual harassment stuff. I mean the like absolute like horrible handling of COVID. The complete disrespect and dishonesty. We're just gonna let Andrew Cuomo happen? Nah.
I like the pick.
Yeah.
I like.
I'm there too. And I think that one more thing I would say is that clearly New York City, which, as Evan highlighted, is a very working class city. You also have a significant, Democrats need to win Asian voters, need to win Hispanic voters, need to win Black voters, in like across regions of that city. That has been a clear ticking time bomb for years now. In 2020, it also moved right, not as much as it did this year, but it was clear where it was headed, and nothing changed. They just stuck their head in the sand. So that's another thing.
If the New York Republicans were able to recruit some billionaire who likes abortion to just run as a competent guy that will, just manage the city, they would be in actual trouble. But they can't find that guy. And so Andrew Cuomo, he's not perverted. He's Italian, and he's back. He's going to be the mayor of New York City, which is a real bummer, because when Eric Adams decided that he wasn't going to run in the Democratic Party, it kind of eliminated my purpose for going up there and covering that primary, which stinks, because I would have liked to go up to New York City this summer, and now it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So personally, I'm very mad at the New York Democrats, and they can't actually make that competitive. All right. This is going to be our final round, and I'm going to go with the Ohio Democrats.
Oh, thank God. That means I will have one of my 2 picks.
They've been totally outfoxed in the past 2 cycles. Tim Ryan was a fine selection, but I think he was a little bit overrated. He still got run over by a total neophyte in JD Vance. We'll see. I mean, like, look, that state has basically become the Midwest version of Florida. It was a purple state. Now it is no longer. And so when we talk about this next census coming down the track, and the idea of a Democratic president only being able to have the blue wall +1, and you're eliminating more and more of these pathways to victory, like, you need to be competitive in Ohio. You need to be competitive in Ohio for state races. You need to be competitive in Ohio for presidential races, and especially for Senate races, which, they quite simply haven't been. And for that, they get my late round, my final round pick.
Yeah, and it's also just like I think that's a good pick. They were like one of my 2 last options, but I will just say that I think the state's like Ohio's urban, and there's a lot of cities. Obviously, Cleveland not the case, but Cincinnati and Columbus are growing a little bit, and there's some life there, and Democrats have just done nothing with it. So it's frustrating, and Sherrod Brown could have won. That was a winnable race. I truly believe that was against Bernie Moreno, who was not a very good candidate, and it didn't really happen. So
yeah, nor was it really even like.
I mean, it was kind of close, but not really.
Close. Yeah, exactly. It was like for a strong candidate to get run over like that. That's telling.
I don't know, man. The demographics are pretty damn bad. I don't think that's a state party problem. I think that's a national party and national coalitions issue that is flowing down to Ohio Democrats. I don't think they're great, but I don't think they should be in this draft.
All right, Ryan, your last pick.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to go back to the Northeast. I'm going to go with a Democratic state party, and I'm okay with it. I'm not sure this was on Evan's radar, but I'm going to take the New Jersey Democrats. Evan, did you?
Oh, I also had that. But that's okay. A little bit of a future looking one, though, right? That they're like they're just letting that state slowly get more and more in play.
I mean, and they did that in 2024. So that's actually the perfect transition to my case here, which is that this is the ticking time bomb for Democrats. To go back to our talk about New York City, which I think the New York Democrats were a good pick there too. That was very clearly a problem dating back to 2018 and 2020. Nothing was done about it. So it isn't too late, but we saw, and everyone in 2024 was caught off guard by New Jersey, obviously myself included. But I was doing some digging, and we saw in 2020 there were some Trump swings in the Newark area. And in 2022, in those House elections, the popular vote in those House elections was Democrats won it, obviously, but only by the single digits. So it was pretty clearly it was, I wouldn't say a warning sign, but it wasn't that good. And it was a swing to the right of a considerable amount from 2020. And then 2024, instead of kind of looking at that and saying, hey guys, this is our job, let's fix this, Democrats almost lost a congressional seat out of it. They, Kamala Harris only won the state by 6%. And now we're having the purple New Jersey conversation, which is fun for no one on the Democratic side of the aisle, because this is a 14 electoral vote state. It's bigger than in terms of electoral vote than Arizona. It's only 2 less than North Carolina. And now we're having conversations with it being purple. The good news is a lot of it comes down to 2025. A lot of it comes down to, how the Democratic, first of all, who they nominate, and obviously how the candidate does, likely against Jack Ciattarelli again. So it's interesting. But I would say for now, given the recent trends, not a good state party. They're not at the bottom of the barrel. It's why they're in the last round. But this is a state where Democrats need to do well among Hispanic voters, among Black voters. They need to hold on to their turnout in cities like Camden, in cities like Newark. They're losing support in the working class areas. And most of all, Democrats demographically have been doing, obviously we know that they've been doing better with voters in the suburbs. There's a lot of wealthy, there's no shortage of affluent, wealthy voters in the New Jersey suburbs, in the north central part of the state. And Donald Trump still did quite well with them in 2024 relative to 2020. I'm really unhappy with how they did in 2024. 2022 wasn't that great for them either. It was kind of masked, but all this is to say they are on fraud watch. I'll put it that way. They are on the hot seat. I mean, they are really, 2025 is going to be quite the test. So circle back to me in 7 months from now. We'll see.
By the way,
they've managed to hold a 9. They've managed to hold a 9-3 congressional delegation in a state that trended well.
But those seats aren't that competitive, though.
They held Andy Kim's seat as he ran for the Senate. Like, I think that is a more impressive accomplishment than we think. No, I think I'll put it this way: as one of this nation's great blue Texas believers, it's really easy to get a state from like, a 15-point lead to like a 5-point lead. It's a hell of a lot harder to get it from a 5-point lead to flip
to a win. Yeah. And
That's
I think
true.
the argument is that Donald Trump might be the high water mark in terms of driving that kind of coalition. That there might just nobody else might be able to drive that car, especially in a state like New Jersey.
And also, now that New Jersey is sort of closer on the periphery, it'll get more money, it'll get more attention. For a last round pick, I think it's fine, but like, I think sort of the doom and gloom might be a little much, Ryan.
Although it might have replaced New York as the place that I go for the primary, just because it is more interesting to me than the New York City the mayoral election.
Oh no, New Jersey's way more interesting.
All right, Evan, your last pick, the last pick of the draft.
Colorado
Mr.
Republicans.
Let's hear
Irrelevant.
it.
Colorado Republicans. They're horrible at this, and I'm not saying they should win, but I'm saying you shouldn't have let Lauren Boebert beat Scott Tipton in a primary in 2020. You shouldn't have then let her carpetbag across the state because she was going to probably lose you that seat. You shouldn't have gotten to a place where, Colorado 3 was one of the last seats to be declared in 2022 at all. It never should have happened. And it's a state where, Democratic margins have held up pretty damn well, even with a significant Hispanic population. It's a state where the GOP sort of can't get to grips to what the state is now. And it's a state full of the kind of voters in the same way that we just said about New York City, right? If they could just get like a rich business guy who's pro-choice and who can sort of punt some of the sort of worse for Republican social issues, they could absolutely win. And, Michael Bennett's probably going to be elected in a sweep to the governor's mansion. Because the GOP have nobody. They have no credible candidate. They are losing, mayorships in Trump won areas. The bench is being decimated. It's really, really bad. And again, it sort of doesn't matter because the difference between Democrats winning Colorado by, 10 or 15 or 20 doesn't really matter. But like the fact the fact that Jared Polis and Michael Bennett were, winning by 20 points in Joe Biden's midterm is unacceptable. And, Colorado and Virginia are often talked about as sort of like paired states because they both sort of flipped under Obama. They both stayed under Hillary and both, quote unquote, should have trended the same way. Well, they absolutely haven't in the post-Trump era. Colorado has gotten bluer and bluer and bluer. Virginia has stayed fairly close, fairly constant. They're both, pretty non-white states. So I don't think it's sort of, race step or, racial depolarization that's doing it. I think it's just that Virginia Republicans understand that their primary electorate cannot be trusted under any circumstances, and that's why let's be clear, Virginia Republicans do the convention so that they can rig it because they know a primary will be bad for them. And I say that as a complete and utter compliment to them.
Compliment to them. Yes.
Yeah. That they know that their electorate can't be trusted. Colorado Republicans elect crazy people. Their state party chairs are frequently crazy people. Their candidates are frequently crazy people. They're extremely bad at this. And, This should be a state that's closer. This should be a state that's more competitive. Colorado Democrats are not the world's most competent force either, especially given the fact that they've somehow drawn themselves a 4-4 congressional map after the 2024 elections, despite winning the state by double digits. It's unacceptable. Colorado Republicans should be in a riot about how unacceptably incompetent they are.
It's hard to argue when you should. Again, it's like when we look at some of these, it's not that they're losing. It's that you want to have some kind of signs of life. You want to have some kind of like small victories. And there's not a lot of them to be found with the Colorado Republicans. All right. Well, there we go. How do we feel? How do we feel about this? Anybody that was there any state party that didn't get picked that we thought was going to get drafted?
No, I thought we hit the big ones.
Well, no, I mean I'd say it was comprehensive, but I think that there was certainly. I mean, I don't know if I would have made it, but I think there's a couple arguments to be made. Like I think in general, to me the interesting one is North Carolina, because I think both those state parties have gotten better in the past year. It's kind of like an iron sharpens iron case. But I think you could have made the argument for North Carolina Dems still, even though they had a good year in 2024 down ballot.
I had North Carolina in the mix, but I couldn't really decide where to go. Obviously, the Republicans didn't exactly cover themselves in glory with Mark Robinson. But still, it is a state that is, it has been pretty reliably, if narrowly read, recently, and so I don't know. Yeah, it was just a little messy for me to decide where to go.
Yeah, I thought about the North Carolina Republicans just because it North Carolina trended pretty substantially left in 2024. Assuming Roy Cooper runs for the Senate, that could be arguably Democrats' best pickup opportunity.
I think so, yeah.
Well, mostly because I don't know who's going to actually run against Susan Collins, and that's like kind of the like sneaky underrated political story of the first half of the year is like main Democrats are not exactly running to the microphone
on
to announce their candidacies. But no, I thought we hit the big ones. Iowa Republicans vaguely sort of made my if I need one list, just because they've gotten massacred in 2 straight state house elections or special elections. Yes. And Kim Reynolds isn't running again. She seems to have pretty bad approvals. It seems like that's a bit of a cluster expletive, but it's I think that one would require Rob Sand to win the governorship for me to really pull the trigger on putting them in the top 15.
Well, there we go. Everybody start building your big boards for next year. Ryan Jakubowski, where can people find you?
Thank you so much. People can find me at Ryan Jakubowski on Twitter. It's JAKUBOWSKI. And you can watch my content on YouTube. It's Understand Politics. I make videos that are short in this, but very similar to what we do here. I want to thank Justin so much for having me on, and Evan. I'm grateful to have once again assembled a slightly better roster than you have. Thank you so much, my friend.
I will dispute that heavily. At Scrimshaw on Twitter, scrimshawscripted.substack.com for all your political needs. Scrimshaw Show is the podcast I do. I've been trying to be more regular with that. It's available on YouTube and via my Substack. And I will be by the rest of my Friday, or by the time you've read people will be listening to this, there will be some hockey and maybe some basketball content over on my Substack too, because frankly, I need an outlet to talk about and write about the things that I care about, and I will just dump it on my politics Substack for now, and I'll figure something else for football season next year.
What's your favorite? We're recording this as the play-in games are completing here for the NBA playoffs. Who's your favorite bet for NBA championship?
I can't believe I'm about to say the words that are going to come out of my mouth.
Oh no!
I think the Lakers are going to win the title.
That is crazy.
I'm sorry. Man. They have the best player. They have the two best players in every series they're in. I don't care. Do you think I want to be saying this? Do you think I want to be saying nice things about the Los Angeles Lakers?
Hey, I think LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time, so I wouldn't mind if they win the.
I've got
finals,
some defensive questions. I've got some defensive questions as we move into the later rounds.
I've also, but here's the thing. I've also got, can Chet Holmgren really be the guy to take advantage of the fact that the Lakers don't have a center?
I mean,
well, maybe not.
We will find out. I don't know. All I'll say is this. Anybody who believes that free trade benefits both nations is not a Dallas Mavericks fan, because they know that there are certainly bad trade deals that can be struck. That is gutting. All right. That's it. Thank you, boys.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Send me an email, won't you? theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find us on YouTube. We're in live video, moving pictures. See this lovely hotel room at the JW Marriott. Politics on the YouTube. You can support us with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3 Cash. And if you'd like to send me anything you'd like in the mail, it is Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. I'm curious, how many people listen to this part of the show and don't just skip? If you listen to this part of the show, send me $1. I'm going to literally send you $1 right back. All right. PayPal.me/payjury. Justin-Young-20 on Venmo, or on Cash App, PX3 Cash. I want to do a little social experiment. Trust me, I will send you your $1 right back. But I'm just curious how many people listen to this part of the show. Of course, you can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. That's $3 a week, price of a cup of coffee, or $99 for the entire year, over 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100, less than $1 an episode, guys. Jeez Louise. But of course, it is we're workshopping this, our fabulous founding tier, our phenomenal founding tier. Get your name read at the end of the podcast, like these fine folks. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Edwin, Andrew, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, D, really? Devon, Paul, a dog named Truckers, Jerry, Gloria, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. Man, that really looked like I was back in San Francisco. That's a fun little filter that you can put on this camera. Anyway, I need to be better at bringing the list. Till next time. I don't know who's on the show next week. We're going to figure that out. Till next week. This is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics. This is the only show that dares discuss all 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.